Welcome everyone to join our seminar tonight. And my name is Julie. Although you can see my name showing on the Zoom is saying Jonathan Ginsberg. Okay, that's Jonathan, that's my colleague. And I'm using his account just for today. So my name is Julie again. I'm from BEEC and we are a education consulting company located at Bay Area, California. And I believe some of them already know us, but we still want to do a very short introduction about us. So we do college consulting, tutoring, test prep, and all these things associated with traditional education consulting. But as always, we like to emphasize our education philosophy. That is the idea that college is just a tool, it's a stage in your life, and your future is our goal to help you plan. So we are here to help you to plan for your future. And we want to help you to pursue what kind of person you're trying to become and what problems you're trying to solve and what kind of career path suits you. And if we keep that as our goal, then suddenly the plan we can provide you are more meaningful because you have a target, you have the objective to pursue, and then the college will just become very, I won't say easy, but let's say easier to do. So we do have, So in addition to our yearly mentor consulting services for middle school, high school, and college students, besides our application consulting services, we are providing many opportunities for our students, such as hands-on experience, which quote unquote means internship. And we do believe that the opportunities we provide are very suitable for their future career paths. And we have some partner companies that provide these opportunities for our students. If you're very interested in our services, please contact us. So on the screen, you can see we have 5-star on Yelp, full score, 100%, very good feedback from our students and the parents. Thank you very much. Thank you for your supporting, and we'll do our best to keep this score. And can you go to next? Yeah. So right now we are having our promotion. So if you contact us, we can provide a free 40 minutes consultation for our first time potential client. So you can just, if you want to make appointment, just email us at info@beecinc.com, or you can contact me in the seminar group. My name is Julie. You can find me very easily searching people Julie BEEC on the screen, and I will jump it out. So yeah. So that's, you are very welcome to subscribe our Facebook and YouTube channel, and also our WeChat, our official WeChat account. We have weekly updates on every Thursday afternoon. We will update some articles about education and some translation articles and some news about anything happening in the US. Yeah, okay, that would be all. Let's move to Professor Dresner. And I will do a very, very short introduction of Professor Dresner. So, so he is, I'm sorry. Give me a second.
Hey, Julie, I can introduce myself.
Okay, or you can do it by yourself. Yes, that's much better. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thanks a lot, Julie. My name is Martin Dresner. I'm a professor at the University of Maryland, College Park. And I'm a professor in an area called supply chain management. And so I'm going to be talking about a supply chain strategy issue, and that's trying to maintain essential products on the shelves of stores, especially during emergency situations like the current COVID-19 pandemic. So I've entitled my topic, What Happened to the Toilet Paper? Managing Supply Chains in an Uncertain World. All right, so I'm going to start talking about why toilet paper has stocked out. In particular, why you can't find toilet paper and other essentials on the shelves of your local supermarket during emergency situations such as the pandemic. And I'll start by showing you a little video that I got off of YouTube.
Professor, I think the audience are saying there's no sound of they cannot hear the sound of the video. Um, Professor, um, I guess there's still no sound for this video. Maybe you want to use the share sound in the Zoom. I'm not very sure. Mm. So, okay, there is an option you need to check for sharing video sound. Yeah. Okay. So, okay, so seems like we have some problems in sharing the sound, but I will include this link later in our seminar group so that everyone can watch this video, short clips later. Yeah.
Okay, you couldn't hear that?
No. I mean, there's some settings in the Zoom, like sharing your sound of your of your video, but I guess that one, yeah, yeah. If you don't mind, we can keep going and always come back and share the video link to our audience.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, I won't show the videos, any more videos.
Mhm.
All right, anyways, the video was about situation where they're talking about all over the world, people can't find essential items like toilet paper. And the question is, why stock out of toilet paper? Or why do the retailers stock out of toilet paper? Well, certainly when the COVID-19 emergency was declared by the Center for Disease Control, or the CDC, people's buying patterns changed. Consumers started hoarding essential products like toilet paper. This is a heat map put out by a consulting firm called Ernst and Company. And the heat map shows year over year changes in buying behavior of various products. You can see that the products we have here are general merchandise type items, like things you buy from the drugstore, and also groceries. Right here, the week of March the 18th, around the time the Center for Disease Control declared emergency, all these green, very dark green boxes indicate very large increases in purchases of these items compared to what we bought at the same time last year. Now, at the same time that happened, we stopped buying other items. So, for example, transportation-related items and also travel-related items. You can see these red boxes are indications of our buying much less of some items this year compared to what we bought last year. All right, so let's get back to toilet paper. Why buy more toilet paper during a pandemic? Do we actually use more toilet paper during pandemics? No, in fact, the toilet paper usage should remain about the same. We don't end up going to the bathroom more often during pandemics, about the same amount of time we would go to the bathroom during normal times. But why the surge in buying? Well, there's a number of psychologists and behavioral economists who have looked at this situation, not necessarily with respect to pandemics, but just in the times of emergency situations. And so they've looked at why we buy these essential items like toilet paper. And there's a number of reasons they've come up with. So, for example, the fear of missing out, fear of running out during lockdowns. We may be copying our friends' neighbors. So we see our neighbors going out and buying a lot of toilet paper and think that, well, maybe that's a good idea and we'll go out and buy a lot of toilet paper as well. We watch media reports of toilet paper shortages and we start panicking, and media saying that we're running out of toilet paper, so we better go and start hoarding toilet paper. And also, for those of us who have experienced other emergencies, so I live on the East Coast and we get hurricanes on the East Coast. And so we know that these hurricanes are coming, and we tend to stock up on certain products in advance of hurricanes. And so one of the products we tend to stock up on is toilet paper, bottled water, toilet paper, and other emergency or essential items. And so we sort of used to buying those types of products during a pandemic, and we do the same during a hurricane. We do the same during other emergency situations such as pandemics. All right. So what I would want to talk to you about is how retailers cope with demand surges during emergencies. Is there anything they can do in order to try to make the situation better? All right, so how can retailers cope with a demand surge? One of the things they could do is they could raise prices. And this is a video that I'm not going to show you since the sound doesn't seem to be working. And it's a video that talks about price gouging during emergency situations and during the COVID-19 situation. So what is price gouging? Price gouging obviously is when toilet paper or other essential products go up to prices that are way above normal situations. And you can see the sign on that on the picture says toilet paper $10 per roll. That's a lot of money to pay for toilet paper. I know that most of you probably don't do the shopping in your household, but I can tell you that toilet paper is usually a lot less than $10 per roll. And so when retailers or resellers take advantage of an emergency situation and jack up the price of an item, that's called, we call that price gouging. Now, although some price gouging occurs, most retailers are reluctant to actually engage in price gouging. Why is that? Well, most states have price gouging laws that prohibit retailers from raising their prices significantly during emergency situations. So one of the reasons why we don't see a lot of price gouging is because it's against the law. And when price gouging occurs, people will report it to the local or the state authorities. The state authorities will then go and clamp down on the retailers that are engaging in price gouging. A second, probably even more relevant reason why retailers don't engage in price gouging is that they really are concerned about their reputation. They don't want to get a lot of bad press. They could lose the loyalty of their customers. And so they feel that it's better to actually stock out of these products, to sell out of the products rather than raise prices in order to discourage demand. And so they don't raise their prices in order to not appear to be sort of bad retailers or to worsen their reputation with their consumers. So if retailers can't raise their prices to cope with demand surges, they need to arrive at other strategies to manage the supply and demand of essential products like toilet paper. And so I'm going to talk about a few strategies that retailers undertake. The first strategy is to limit purchases. This is perceived as a fair way to allocate demand. And so you've gone into a stores probably during the COVID-19 pandemic, and you've seen signs in the toilet paper shelves or the hand sanitizer shelves or Clorox wipe shelves saying limit, one case or one package or two packages per household. And so that's one of the ways that retailers have used in order to try to spread out demand among customers, and it's perceived as being a fair way to allocate the products. So everybody is treated the same. Nobody can come in and buy more than one or two packages, and so it's a way for the retailers to allocate scarce supply of products, or when there's excess demand for products like essential products during emergencies. Now, I would note that raising prices is also a demand allocation method, but price hikes allocate products to those people who have the greatest means to purchase the product. That is, if you have the money to pay for $10 per roll of toilet paper, you'll go out and buy it. But there's a lot of people who just don't have the means to do that. And so raising prices to allocate scarce supply when demand surges is perceived as being an unfair way to allocate the scarce supply, because basically the wealthy people are the ones that get those products. Now, I would say that although it's perceived as to be an unfair way to allocate scarce supply, it is the normal way that scarce supply is allocated. So, for example, many of you might want to buy, when you get older, might want to buy beachfront property, say on the coast in California. And so, how is that beachfront property allocated? Well, it's allocated by the pricing mechanism. That is, you need to pay a lot of money in order to buy that beachfront property. So the allocation method for that beachfront property is a price allocation method. So it's actually the normal way that we allocate scarce resources. But in emergency situations, especially for essential products like toilet paper, it's not perceived as fair. And so retailers don't practice it. They practice other types of allocation methods, such as limiting purchases to one or two per household. Now, there are problems with this purchase limit strategy. Certainly what happens is the stores will end up stocking out. Even though you only can buy one or two items, consumers will tend to game the system. They'll go from one store to another, or they'll come back to the same store and they'll make multiple purchases, or they'll get every member of their household to go and buy toilet paper. So that it's not a perfect method of allocation. Also, certain types of people tend still to be disadvantaged. For example, elderly and handicapped customers may not be willing to line up or to get up in the morning to go and get these scarce products. So they may not be able to get their allocation of one or two per household. So it's not a perfect method, but it's perceived to be fairer than a price method for allocation. Another strategy used by retailers to cope with shortages in supply or excess demand is what I call a transshipment strategy. So the pandemic may impact various regions of the country at different times. So we saw earlier in the pandemic that the East Coast, New York, for example, was hit pretty heavily by the pandemic, whereas other parts of the country, California, for example, wasn't hit all that hard. Later on, other places in the country were hit harder. California got hit later, and New York wasn't hit all that well. To the extent that the pandemic or other emergency situations do not hit all areas of the country at the same time, companies can take advantage of that, and knowing that perhaps the demand surges for certain essential products are going to vary around the country. So maybe early in the pandemic, more people in New York were buying toilet paper, but later on in the pandemic, maybe more people in California were buying toilet paper or other essential products like hand sanitizer. And so this is actually a map, not of the COVID-19 outbreak, but an outbreak that occurred 11 years ago called swine flu outbreak. And it was the last pandemic that we had in the country before COVID-19. And you can see that severity levels sort of varied across the country. These are sort of measures of severity and other measures of severity. And you can see that by the different colors on the graphs that in fact these levels are different in different states. And as I said, large retailers like Walmart can make use of this, and they can ship products to where demand is greatest. So national retail chains such as Walmart and Target can ship essential products from regions of low demand to regions of high demand, and that's called transshipment strategy. Distributors of essential products can also divert products from industrial or commercial supply chains to consumer supply chains. So we have toilet paper that gets supplied to households, but we also have toilet papers in different types of rolls usually that get supplied to offices and to commercial enterprises. And so what we can do is, if we know that there's a lockdown, we can try to do is if we know that there's going to be a lockdown, people are going to be spending less time at the office and more time at the home, we can try to divert some toilet paper that was going to go to the offices to the home market. And office people buy their toilet paper from different sources quite often than consumers. Now everybody goes to Costco, both businesses and households, but commercial enterprises and offices both can buy toilet paper from places like Staples, not normal places where most households go to buy toilet paper. So what toilet paper manufacturers can try to do is can try to divert the toilet paper from the office supply chain to the home use supply chain if lockdowns are going to be coming. The transshipment strategies tend to work best when emergencies are localized. For example, hurricanes or tornadoes impact very specific areas, leaving the rest of the country untouched. So if there's an emergency situation only in a very small area, then that area can get shipments in from all the rest of the country. And that's when this transshipment policy works the best. COVID-19 pandemic, the impact of the whole country has been pretty widespread, and shortages have been nationwide. And so this transshipment strategy hasn't worked that well. Plus, there are differences in the industrial and commercial products and household products that make transshipment difficult. I showed you this toilet paper, the office toilet paper, and the home toilet paper. Most people don't want to get toilet paper in rolls like this for their home use. They don't have the toilet paper dispensers that will handle those types of rolls. Mm-hmm. So it's difficult for manufacturers to change their manufacturing processes from this type of from the office type of toilet paper to the household type of toilet paper. So sometimes that diversion strategy doesn't work all that well either. So these transshipment strategies sometimes work and sometimes don't work all that well. Another problem with transshipment strategies is sometimes transportation routes can be closed, so products cannot be easily diverted to points where demand is greatest. And so, for example, air cargo capacity largely disappeared as the airlines cut flights. Now, we get a lot of our products sent to us from Asia, and their sort of lockdown occurred before our lockdown. And so there was a possibility to try to divert some products from that would normally be destined for the Asian market to the US market. But if there's no airlines flying the flights between China and the United States, or very few airlines flying those flights, then there's no cargo capacity available on those airlines. And this is an example. This is a sort of an indication of a drop in air carrier capacity that occurred right at the time of the pandemic. All these airlines stopped flying between Asia and the United States, and so we weren't able to get products in from Asia that would normally come in by air. All right, so there are issues with the transshipment strategy. So another strategy is to move quickly. The US had advance notice of COVID-19 since it hit China and Asia before hitting the United States. And successful companies took advantage of this advance notice by trying to find alternative suppliers for essential products, increasing their order size in advance of the lockdown occurring here, and also reconfiguring their workspaces to reduce the spread of COVID-19. So some companies can move quickly in order to try to avoid the worst impacts that occurred during the pandemic. There are problems with this move quickly strategy as well. Not all emergencies have advance notice. Earthquakes, for example, are emergencies that often come without advance notice. I know a lot of you probably live on the West Coast, and at some point you can experience some sort of an earthquake. If it's a sort of a devastating earthquake like San Francisco had a number of years ago, creating an emergency situation, well, that didn't come with any advance notice, so this move quickly strategy wouldn't have worked all that well. And even companies that move quickly may be moving too late. So maybe too late to try to divert products to areas that are needed, even if you try to move quickly. All right, I'm going to talk a little bit more about planning for emergencies. Strategies such as limiting purchases and transshipping products after emergencies have already occurred, I'm going to refer to as reactive strategies. These are ways that retailers have reacted to an emergency situation. They waited for something to happen, and then they decided to change the strategies. Companies are much better off being proactive, that is, planning in advance for emergency situations rather than just reacting to them. Though pandemics are rare events, smart companies have contingency plans in place for all types of emergency situations. When a rare event does occur, they will have some blueprints or action plans in place that they can then follow. So for example, procedures for closing workplaces and converting to at-home work. Right? You don't want to wait for the situation to happen. You want to try to think about all the bad things that could happen to your company, and you want to plan in advance. And you can learn from past events. So demand for essential products also surged. I mentioned that there was a pandemic about 10 years ago, 11 years ago, called the swine flu pandemic, or the H1N1 pandemic. And here is a chart that shows what happens when the emergency declaration occurred for that pandemic. This is what happened to hand sanitizer sales when the Center for Disease Control declared an emergency. There was a 250% increase in the week that that emergency was declared in hand sanitizer sales. Well, does that remind you of what happened during COVID-19? Everybody went out and bought hand sanitizer. Well, that's exactly what happened 11 years ago during the H1N1 swine flu pandemic. Everybody went out and bought hand sanitizer. And so, there are smart companies around like Perel. They anticipated this demand surge. And here's a quote I got from the Wall Street Journal. So Perel has experienced a substantial increase in demand for its line of sanitizing products, particularly for hand sanitizer and hand sanitizing wipes and cleaning spray, said a spokeswoman for Perel parent company Gojo Industries, Inc. Consumer demand online and at retailers has been especially pronounced, while businesses and health facilities have stepped up orders for more incrementally. She said the company has significantly increased production to meet expected demand, adding shifts and having employees work overtime. The latest rise in demand, she said, is not unprecedented, but is more pronounced than outbreaks such as severe acute respiratory syndrome or SARS in 2002, 2003, and H1N1 influenza virus in 2009. So the Perel people knew that this pandemic was coming. They knew that people were going to go out and buy hand sanitizer. And so they had a plan in place that once they heard about this outbreak in China, they started ramping up production, knowing that a lot of people were going to want to buy their product. So smart companies carefully monitor the environment. And since COVID-19 hit the US after hitting Asia, smart companies in the US like Perel had the time to increase supplies of essential products in advance of the pandemic arriving. All right, so the second planning strategy, is to try to build flexibility into your operations. Companies that are flexible are best able to successfully manage their operations during emergency situations. So examples of flexibility would be liquor manufacturers that were able to convert to making hand sanitizer. Now, not all liquor manufacturers were able to do this, but some liquor manufacturers had more flexible manufacturing processes. So they could go and they can convert to making hand sanitizer during the pandemic. Restaurant chains that can convert from sit-down service to takeout and delivery service. And some restaurant chains, for example, those that had associations with delivery platforms, were able to convert more easily from sit-down to delivery. Other ones that were less flexible were the ones that tended not to be able to convert to takeout and delivery. And some of those restaurant chains have now gone bankrupt. Another example of flexibility are the airlines that can convert their aircraft from passenger operations to cargo operations. People stopped flying during the pandemic. But as I said, there was a large demand for air cargo capacity, especially since these passenger air flights weren't taking place. Airlines had these aircraft, and those that could convert their aircraft from carrying passengers to carrying cargo were the most successful in riding out the pandemic, because they could at least make some revenues, earn some revenues during those times, whereas those that were just passenger operators, their revenues plunged. In general, what companies want to do is they want to practice what we call supply chain management. The supply chain manager is responsible for ensuring the right products are available at the right time, in the right place, and in the right condition. Supply chain management is especially important during emergencies, since we don't want to run short of essential products. Supply chain manager needs to work closely with manufacturers and distributors to plan for emergencies. So Walmart, for example, was able to ramp up deliveries during pandemic, given its partnership with the delivery platform Instacart. They had already had that partnership in place with Instacart. Pandemic hit, some of these stores ended up closing, or people didn't want to go to the stores because they were worried about catching the coronavirus. Walmart was able to deliver products to people's homes because it had already partnered with Instacart. So it sort of was practicing supply chain management by building flexibility into its potential ways to deliver its products, so that during the emergency situation, it was able to continue operations. In fact, Walmart sales have been very good during the pandemic. As I said, many other retailers have experienced problems. JCPenney, for example, is one of the retailer that's recently gone bankrupt. But Walmart has done quite well. It's been flexible in its approaches, and so it was able to deliver products during the pandemic. Yeah, I want to also talk about the government role. You think about emergencies like pandemics, they're really rare events. We had, as I said, this H1N1 swine flu pandemic 10 years ago. The last really major pandemic was a Spanish flu pandemic that was about 100 years ago. So that's a pretty rare event. But pandemics are not only rare events, they can be very costly events. The US economy contracted by historical proportions in the second quarter of 2020 at an annual rate of about 33%. You can see that, you know, here we were growing fairly steadily for many years, and then all of a sudden the economy just plunged. And what is that an indication of? It's an indication of a lot of companies not selling products to people. And so for many companies, this COVID-19, although a rare event, has been a catastrophic event. So it's important to try to plan for these emergencies, even though they're rare, because they can be very costly. So emergency inventories are needed. Extra supplies of essentials are needed for emergencies, but retailers and their suppliers don't want to hold a lot of excess inventories of essential products in case of emergencies, because most years this excess inventory will just be wasted. You're going to wait around for a pandemic to occur, and if a really bad pandemic only occurs once every 100 years, in 99 years out of 100, you're going to just end up throwing away that excess inventory. So companies don't want to do that. They want to try to hold as little inventory as possible, because holding inventory is very costly. Got to build warehouses to hold the inventory. People have to manage that inventory, to insure the inventory, and you'll end up throwing out any inventory that people don't buy. So companies don't want to hold a lot of excess inventory and waiting for a pandemic, possibility of a pandemic to occur. So there is a government role. Governments can help ensure that essential products are available during emergencies. And there's an agency in the federal government called FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, and it has the responsibility to supply essential products during emergencies. And it does that when there's hurricanes. It goes around to the areas that have been affected by the hurricanes. The federal government will declare an emergency situation, and FEMA will help out with supplying things like bottled water to people who need it. So the government role during emergencies is to hold or support inventories of essential products, for example, in government warehouses, to support the domestic manufacturing capabilities. And one of the problems we've had during this pandemic is that we don't, in this country, make enough essential products anymore. So for example, we have trouble getting N95 face masks. And those are essential items for frontline people working during the pandemic. We just don't make enough. So really, this is really a government role, because most years we're not going to really sell all that many N95 face masks. Certainly not nearly as many as we sold this year. And so what we need to have is we need to have this excess capacity available, excess manufacturing capacity, just in case one of these rare events occurs. And companies don't want to invest in that capacity, but governments can help support that by subsidizing these manufacturers to have this excess capacity. We need to also support the operations of transportation firms. As we see, we need to get products from one place to another. I mean, and the airlines were a typical example of, you know, they started shutting down. And so the government can have a role in trying to support the airlines to make sure they continue to operate and bring in emergency supplies that we need during the pandemic. And certainly that's what the government did. It provided some subsidies to the airlines. And finally, the government can coordinate planning among all the stakeholders, the retailers, the manufacturers, the distributors, the transportation firms, the state governments, and that's a role that an agency like FEMA can play. There's a lot of coordination that goes on to make sure that essential products are allocated in a fair way, so that those areas that really need those products get those products. All right, just to draw some conclusions, sort of lessons learned. Companies need to plan for emergencies, even though they're rare events. Planning should involve working with partners to guarantee supply and distribution of essential products. And since planning for emergencies is costly to private firms, governments have a role to help ensure the supply of essential products during emergencies. All right, that's my talk, and I'll take any questions you might have.
All right, thank you so much, Professor. Thank you so much for giving us this fascinating webinar tonight. And I do have a couple of people asking questions here. So the number one will be, what happened to those extra hand sanitizers, like those overstocked? How do people use them? We just wait or throw it? Yeah. And yeah. Oh yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
All right, so people just hoard the stuff, and so I'm guessing using it during the pandemic, but a lot of people maybe will have so much hand sanitizer around it'll last them a lifetime. Other people have tried to take advantage of the situation by selling the stuff on eBay at high prices, and I think at the beginning of the pandemic, some people may have paid those high prices in order to buy that hand sanitizer. But what happened was basically a lot of other companies got into the hand sanitizer. As I said, liquor manufacturers converted their production over to hand sanitizer. Other companies into the hand sanitizer business, so that the shortages in supplies were taken care of by developing more manufacturing capabilities. So a lot of people who bought hand sanitizer are probably going to be using this they bought for many months or many years in the future. Now, I also will say that what we have done during the pandemic is we've learned differences in behavior. And one of the things that they've been teaching us is to wash our hands more frequently and to use hand sanitizer more frequently in order to avoid spreading germs. And it's not just coronavirus, it's the flu virus and any other germs. And so this is a learned behavior, and we found that after the swine flu pandemic, that for the next 3 or 4 years, people still used a lot more hand sanitizer than they used before the pandemic. Now, eventually, people unlearn these habits, but this extra use of hand sanitizer is likely to be with us for the next few years. So we'll go through the inventories that we've ordered probably in the next few years, and then maybe we'll forget why we were using so much hand sanitizers and start using less.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. So we have we do have some very, let's say very professional questions here. So, okay. So the first one is about our students. So what kind of students should consider studying supply chain or supply chain management? For econ, the people who study econ or business, or they can be both or hybrid?
So there are a number of schools that have supply chain management majors or minors or courses, and they're typically in business schools, although sometimes you can get supply chain management type courses, say in engineering programs as well, but they're typically in business schools. And it's a major in my school, the University of Maryland, and in many other schools. It's not as popular as say marketing or finance, but it's in some schools, for example, the University of Tennessee, it's the most popular major. And because we've typically been able to graduate our students with pretty good jobs, and we find that that's what draws students into a major, the chances of getting a good job. Now the jobs tend to be more practical than some of the jobs that other majors might graduate in the business school at least. But some people like practical jobs. They like to run things. So for example, if you want to deal with international purchasing, trying to get products from China over to the U.S., that would be a supply chain manager's job, and you'd have to deal with container shipping lines and distributors and manufacturers over in China. And you maybe have to deal with import, customs house brokers, companies that help you in the importing of the products. You might have to deal with the government itself, because governments will want to take some money from you when you import products in the form of tariffs and duties, sort of stuff. So it's a pretty interesting job that you can, because you do deal with a lot of different aspects of business.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, that's great. And yeah, we do have another question about the job market. What's the job market look like for supply chain majors? But I think you have already answered part of them in your previous question. So if you don't mind, could you explain a little bit more about the job market?
Well, up until the pandemic hit, our students were walking away with multiple job offers. Obviously, the situation has changed now, and so it's going to revert back, I think, to job market for everybody, but it's going to take a few years. And so it's a little bit difficult for me to predict the job market over the last few years. But I will say that prior to the pandemic, it was great, and I would say that what we've really seen is the importance of supply chain management. Now, if you think about Amazon, what is Amazon? Basically, it's a company that is really good at supply chain management. It's really good at moving goods around, sure that they get to the consumers really quickly. And they've opened distribution centers all over the country, all over the world. They have these distribution centers. I've heard that these department stores that have closed, like the J.C. Penney's that have been in these malls, are going to be converted to distribution centers for companies like Amazon and Walmart, so that they can even do a better job of getting products to the consumers in a short period of time. So that's all. These are all supply chain management jobs, and I'm not going to say you're going to graduate from a university and go work at a shipping dock, but you need to be sort of figuring out what the best routing is for these products. You need to be planning for demand to try to make sure that the products end up in the right distribution centers. And so all these types of planning jobs are supply chain management type positions. And so I think that they're going to be, it's going to be an area that's going to bounce back more so than other areas following the pandemic.
Yeah, thank you so much. So, okay, we got a math problem, I guess, or econ problem. Is there a quantitative model to measure the readiness of a company in emergency situation?
There's quantitative models that we use in supply chain management, and I'm sure that there are quantitative models for that. So, for example, we have quantitative models that tell you how much inventory you should be holding at any time. And in models, you can build in certainly situations for rare events like pandemics that may tell you what kind of inventory you ought to be holding. So yeah, sure, there are lots of mathematical models like simulation models that we could use to determine that. Yeah, definitely. Yes,
we can maybe do some forecasting through this models. Yes. And okay, so we get last questions. Yeah. Do you have any suggestions for students who want to study in business? What should they prepare? What majors are in a business school? Well, I guess for the last question, you can come to ask us if you would like. So, but Professor, can you answer the first two questions?
So the first question is what? Can you repeat it?
So do you have any suggestions for the students who want to study business? And what should they prepare?
what they should be doing in high school, for example? Is that
Yeah, so I guess so. Is like how they like the approach they can take towards the business world.
yeah, I mean, pretty well all colleges have business majors, and so I mean, in general, although finance is different from marketing, it's different from supply chain management. Usually, you need to have reasonable quantitative skills because there'll be some mathematical models that, like the kind we just talked about, that you're going to have to go through. Some programming skills are pretty helpful to have these days. So you should be very comfortable with, very basic with Excel, but other programming, database management, for example, is often used in business schools. So programming, math, communication. You need to be able to write reports, and you need to be able to communicate to people. So practicing presentations and writing reports is very important. And critical analysis of situations. So we do a lot in the business schools. We do a lot of Harvard Business School type case studies. So we'll give students a scenario and we'll ask students to try to analyze a situation. So you've got to be able to do that in a critical way in order to come up with some recommendations for company managers. So being able to critically analyze situations, practicing that is very important.
Yeah, definitely. Like usually we have in business school, you do have marketing for graduate schools, or finance, supply chain, accounting. So depends on the different schools, different business schools. They do have different majors in it. But usually we can see accounting, we can see MBA, we can see EMBA, we can see finance major, we can marketing, or some of them may even include like a data analysis or business analytics, something like that. Yeah, but I would say is most likely it depends on the school how they define a business major. Yeah.